Why are you here? You're here to outwork. You're here to outtrain. You're here to win.
Hey, talking to Southern Illinois University Edwardsville coach Jeremy Spates. Coach, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
No, I appreciate it. I'm excited about it, Mike. So
I know the season's here and things are getting busy. Can you tell me just what the energy is there in the room and in the office?
we've actually had a really good energy this fall. We brought in 13 incoming guys, so we had a huge transformation in the team. 12 freshmen, and then we had one transfer. Who's only a true sophomore. So, we got a lot of young guys in there. They had a lot of success in high school as far as state championships, national championships, things like that. So, they brought in a younger energy, a new, kind of feeling. And our older guys have been feeding off of it. It's been really good. I talked to our 49-pounder last night, and he was going to hang out with some of the freshmen. And he was like, yeah, it's just a great group. He's like, I feel like we're really kind of gelling into a family, which was cool. So we've had a good energy overall. This fall, Barlow McGee is our new grad assistant as well, came over from Missouri. So Barlow's doing a really good job bringing some energy and bringing some new things to the program. So we had our wrestle-offs last week, and we had a good crowd there. And I think the parents and the alumni and the fans are excited about it. So overall, I'd say good. That was a long answer.
There was. That's okay. You can talk as long as you want. Like, we don't have, we're free form. But, the one thing I wanted to just explore, so you got a ton of young energy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not old. But the older you get, can you still connect to that young energy?
I was talking to somebody about that the other day, and they were asking what I like about coaching. And I said, I like being around the young guys, being around college guys. It's fun. They keep you young. I'm definitely older than I look. A lot of people think, I'm getting up there. Eric Hollis, our other assistant, likes to remind me of that quite frequently, how old I am.
How old are you?
But no, that's an awesome part about coaching, being around these guys and feeding off that energy. And I think that's huge for coaching too, because if we don't come in and bring that energy back, then it's got to be that give or take. So.
Fantastic. How old were you when you started wrestling?
Well, I always was around it with my dad being a coach, but he actually held me out of competition and really getting serious so my first competition was in fourth grade. Okay. So when I was a kid, I'd go on to the wrestling room. I'd be running around on the mats. Me and my brother would be kind of playing around wrestling. I would go to the camps and I would watch a little bit of the technique. I was always into it, so I wanted to be there. So I would, at camps, watch a little bit. Maybe I'd be over playing in the corner when I was really young. But and then so probably second, third grade started doing a little bit more as far as drilling and things like that. And then in fourth grade, my dad finally let me go. He let me go to one tournament. I went to the TC3 Open in Dryden, New York. Was my first one. So I went to one tournament in fourth grade. I went to three, I think, in fifth, and then in sixth grade, I started really getting into it and doing freestyle and stuff like that. So
I know. So your dad is a legendary coach. You're exposed to it from a young age. You're telling me you start doing freestyle by the time you're in sixth grade. Was this all an internal drive?
I really loved it, and I loved sports in general. Before I got into wrestling, my parents had me in everything. My mom was a gymnast, so I did gymnastics classes when I was, just rolling around. We did judo. I did swimming. I played soccer a lot, actually. That was my main sport early before I got more into wrestling. I played baseball. I ran track. So I did a little bit of everything, and I really loved sports. And then I always liked wrestling. You mentioned the college guys and that energy. I grew up around those guys. So, right. We'd have Thanksgiving. We'd have guys over at our house, or, if something happened, guys cutting weight late on a Friday night, and we're going up to the wrestling. I'm going with my dad up to the wrestling room to go help him out, or things like that. So I did always really like the sport.
What made you serious about it?
Well, a couple things I think. Well, I'll tell you a funny story that I tell people sometimes. So when I started getting a little more serious with it, my dad he would give me some incentives. So, for example, the new wrestling shoes, which they would be classics now, the old Asics Tigers,
Sure.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
I wanted to get a pair of wrestling shoes, and he said, "Well, okay, if you work hard, I'll get you a pair of wrestling shoes." So, I worked hard. I got a pair of wrestling shoes, and then same thing with like headgear or singlet. He said, you work hard, and I'll get you a singlet. And so I was like, all right. So I go to that first tournament, that I mentioned earlier, and I see these guys. They're decked out, full singlets. They got double knee pads, sweet headgear. I'm like, man, that kid must have worked really hard.
That's awesome.
I didn't know that everybody wasn't on the same incentive plan that I was.
Well, that's a good incentive plan. I love that incentive plan, right? It's
So going back to the question, so I always liked the sport and sports in general, and always had that hard work ethic from things like that, and enjoyed the hard work. But I think part of what made me get serious about it too is as I got a little bit older, like in 8th grade, I was trying out for the JV in New York. You can do varsity or JV sports. Yep. Is that the little one?
That's my dog, who's all of a sudden very needy.
I can see you doing something. So as I was getting into these other sports, oh yeah,
I'm listening.
Okay, I was decent, but I wasn't as good as I wasn't having the success in the other sports as I did in wrestling. In 8th grade, I was on the varsity wrestling team. I got cut from the JV baseball team the one year. So then, the next year I actually did make it, and that's the reason I didn't go to Fargo. I played baseball that summer, but then when I got to high school, we actually moved to Oklahoma, and my 9th grade year, and I really wanted to freestyle and start getting more serious with that. So that's when I cut out the other sports, but partially because I loved the sport and I was good at it, and partially because I wasn't as good at the other sports, honestly.
Right.
In my freshman year, I was just over 5 foot, 100 pounds. So, baseball, I couldn't hit a home run. I could, I
right. Tiny strike zone, but
yeah.
That's good. I like the multi-sport stuff too, and being self-driven is always those are the guys that always go the furthest. You went to Mizzou. You're an All-American there. What about Brian Smith attracted you? You were kind of the first, the beginning of the building of Missouri.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about Brian Smith in the program?
Yep. And so I knew Coach Smith from his time. He was an assistant with my dad at Cornell, and so that's how I knew Coach Smith. So as I was coming out, there was a few coaches who knew my dad like that, that reached out and they said, I know probably he's going to Oklahoma, but if something changes, let us know. And Coach Smith came in that year, and I was going to go to Oklahoma. My dad actually kind of talked me into maybe looking at other places. Michael Leitner was a returning national finalist as a sophomore in my weight class that year. So, it was like, it's going to be tough to crack the lineup. So he actually talked me into it. And the plan was I was going to go somewhere for 2 years and then transfer back. And I got to Missouri and I loved it. But with Coach Smith, I knew him a little bit already. And then we just clicked right away. It was funny because a lot of stuff he was selling me on were things that weren't happening. A lot of times get to a program, it's like, hey, we do this, we freestyle, we do, and he's telling me we're going to build this thing. By the time you leave, we're going to be beating, the Big 12 was really tough back then, even with just the 5 schools, everybody was pretty tough. We're going to beat these Big 12 teams. We're going to put people on, national teams and things like that. And everything that he told me in the recruiting process, we did in those 5 years that I was there, which was pretty special. We went from losing to a Division II team my freshman year to beating Oklahoma State in the duel of the year. They won their 3rd national title, so just being a part of that was pretty special. But, Coach Smith had a good way of putting it across, and in the recruiting process, he had all those things lined out, even though they weren't set up yet. He was working on getting them set. And, it was funny. The biggest thing I remember asking him, I said, Coach, my biggest worry is who am I going to work out with? They finished that year before with 9 guys on the roster.
Right.
And he said, hey, I'm around your weight, and I'm going to work out with you. We have Lee Pritz, who was awesome. He was one of my workout partners in college. And we got Pritz, and we're bringing in this other kid, Kenny Burleson, who ended up being an All-American as well. And we're bringing in this other kid, and he said, don't worry, we'll find you workout partners, and we'll make sure it happens. We're working on that now. So, and that was something that was cool because he did, we always brought in good people. It was an awesome time to be a part of that.
Now, do you see any similarities in your role now and what you were going into as a wrestler?
Yeah, that actually honestly was a big part of what brought me here is, I saw a lot of the same similarities. I mean, one, we're in the Midwest, we're 2 hours away from Mizzou. So in this area and in a really good wrestling area, I mean, the state of Illinois, we're right on the Missouri border. Oklahoma's not far away. There's some good wrestling out in the Midwest here. So we're in a good wrestling area. They actually had a great history. Not a lot of people know this, but they can you still hear me, Mike?
Yeah, broke up for a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
We're talking about really good wrestling area.
Yeah, a lot of similarities with the programs, and I was talking about SIUE's history, and they were a smaller school for a long time. It was a small commuter school, so they were D2. But in the 70s, they placed a few times at the NCAA tournament. In the 80s, they won 3 consecutive D2 national titles. Had a couple of teams place second and third. And back then, if you won D1s or D2s, you could go to D1. So we actually have a number of Division I All-Americans in the program's history. We've got Alan Grammer was a 2-time Division I semifinalist, 3-time D2 champ. Al Sears was the all-time pin leader of all of NCAA for a number of years. You got Timmy Wright was the first 4-time national champ of any division and Division I All-American. So have a great wrestling history. And then honestly, a big thing was when I got here. I got here and campus is beautiful. I'll swing you by over here, looking at my office out here into the lakes right behind those woods over there. So I saw the pictures and everything online, and I was like, man, this is a nice campus and looks like a good place to work. And then when I got here, I was like, wow, it really, I figured pictures you can make look good. Anybody can make a picture look good with some Photoshop or stuff, but got here and it's a beautiful campus. It's a great university as far as we offer almost every major. We've got some really good majors, engineering, pharmacy, business that do a lot with the programs in St. Louis. And then honestly, a big part of it was meeting the alumni, meeting the people that worked in the athletic department, our AD, our associate AD, everybody, our compliance director, just awesome. And then meeting a few of the guys on the team, the assistant coach that was here at the time. So I met everybody and I just fell in love with it, honestly. Just
go back after graduating, you're an assistant for your dad, correct, for a few years? And then at Cornell. Can you tell me a little bit, how did your relationship change with your dad as a coach?
Well, it was funny. So when I was coming out, I was thinking about getting into business. Actually, I was business management, and I get the degree back there.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about getting into business, and then I had a few coaching offers. Coach Martin at Old Dominion was trying to get me out there. I was going to stay at Mizzou and be like a director of operations and run their freestyle club and do some things like that. And actually, I was kind of torn on what to do. I wanted to stay at Mizzou. That was going to be the fun thing. I would coach all my buddies and be around that program still, but it was not a full-time position, no health insurance, that kind of thing. So, but, Old Dominion was attractive as well. So I called my dad to get some clarity, and I was like, hey, I'm torn. And he was like, oh, I didn't know you were still thinking about coaching, because I had been talking business. And I said, well, I'm getting these offers, so I'm looking at everything. He said, well, if you're going to coach, you need to come down here then. So it ended up just working out timing wise. They were looking for somebody, and so I ended up going down there and coaching with him. And it was neat because I always thought I would wrestle for him. I mean, he was my coach all the way growing up, even though I had great coaches all the way through. I had some awesome people to be around coming up, but he always was my coach, and I didn't get to wrestle for him, and he didn't get to coach me, even though he was always coach after every duel. Or, I was getting a call from him right after all our matches in college and everything. So that was neat that we got to coach together. And I was down there with him for 5 years. And then the funny thing is, at the end of those 5 years, when I left to go to Cornell, it was emotional. It was tough. We had just brought in a good recruiting class at Oklahoma. We had been down. We were good my first few years there, and then we took a little downturn. So we were, in a little bit of a rebuild, and we had just brought in who was in that class, Kendrick Maple and the Lesters, and there was a number of other good kids in that class, and so I was very excited about that. And then when I got the chance to go to Cornell, it was mainly about getting out from under my dad, just the optics of that, of coaching with my dad. I kind of realized that I was going to stay in coaching, so that was another step up to a different program and a good building experience. But so it was emotional when we. I made the decision, but obviously in all this, he helped me with a lot of these decisions. So made the decision to go. And then it was funny once the emotions were kind of over and we were laughing about it, it was like, he goes, you know what? Honestly, I'm not going to hate you going back to just being my son again and us not working together. And I said, me either. Because, it is not easy when it's family and,
Totally. Do you have any advice for fathers and sons, coaches and wrestlers, based on your experience?
Yeah, I do. I think you got to have perspective. I think that's a big thing my dad taught me. He was great about, when I came off the mat after a loss, he didn't say anything to me. He tells one funny story where we got into it. I remember at a high school tournament one time, but for the most part, he just left me alone, let me cool off, do my thing. With wrestling, the biggest requirement was work hard. Yeah. As long as you're working hard, we're going to be okay. So that was a big thing. Teach the hard work, but also, it doesn't need to be a grind down and wear these kids out. I mean, I think we're seeing a turn from that, but I think you've seen a lot of kids, generations a little bit different. A lot of kids aren't wrestling now because it is so hard. So you got to remember to have fun with it. I think that's a big thing. I mean, we worked hard in the wrestling room, but we also had fun outside of it, and so I think that was a big part of it. So our relationship wasn't just wrestling. We did these other sports. I mean, my dad was great about having me and my brother out in the backyard playing catch forever. I realize now as a dad, I got a 1.5-year-old. I think he was just trying to throw the ball to us and make us chase it to wear us out.
Yeah, right.
But it was fun for us. So,
Totally. There's something to that. Between sports seasons for my own son, if he doesn't have an activity, if he's not getting energy out, there's holes in the walls, there's fights going on. I'm like, can you? Anyway, so that's a good story. What caused the blow up Matt's side? Was that something that you were upset about? Or?
Yeah, this is a funny one. No. So in high school, and a little bit in college, but I was very offensive as a wrestler overall. And I didn't like giving up on things. So a lot of times I scored a lot of my matches. There was a lot of points scored either for me or against me. But one of my things was early in matches, I would go to my back. I would hang too long on a scramble or, not bail. And I'd go to my back. And so I'd be down. I came back a lot, some of the other parents would laugh. They call me like the heart attack kid or something like that. Cause I was always scaring them and breaking off my back. So I'm wrestling in the finals of a tournament, decent tournament, and I'm wrestling a kid that's good. And before the match, I'm talking to my dad a little bit, and he says, hey, be smart early. If you're giving up the takedown, give up the takedown. Don't go to your back. And so I go to my back at the beginning of the match, and I think it ended up being an overtime match. I took the kid down right at the end to put it in overtime, and then got the takedown in overtime and to win. And so I win, and I come back over. My dad purposely was sitting away from me because he was not happy. And I came over to him and I sat down next to him and I said, what did I do wrong there? And he just turned and looked at me because this is why he didn't want to say anything. He said, what did you do wrong? What did you do right? And I threw that's why I didn't want to talk to you. And, that
I
was
got it.
the one time I remember us ever really getting into it about a match or anything.
That's really funny.
Funny,
Well,
yeah.
So chronology, you're leaving your dad, getting out from underneath the shadow a little bit, but also opportunity at Cornell.
Mhm.
You're there at kind of the right time. Can you tell me a little bit about Cornell, and did you watch the World Championships?
Yeah. So yeah. No, it was a good time. I'd been there for 5 years, and so Coach Cole actually approached me at high school nationals, and he said, we're looking for a middleweight coach. We're looking for somebody that's good on top, and kind of has a good practice plan. And he said I'd asked a few people, and they mentioned your name, and so at first I liked it. I really liked it at Oklahoma, and I wasn't thinking real seriously. My wife now was my girlfriend at the time, and she was born and raised in Norman, Oklahoma, and we're talking about Ithaca, New York. So
Right.
there's some factors in there. But the more I talked with Coach Cole, I talked. Damian Hahn was the other assistant that was there, and I actually helped host him on his recruiting trip to Oklahoma. Robbie Waller was his host, but then when we were on a university world team together, so we roomed together at that. So I knew Damien, so I called Damien, and he had some great things to say. And then talked with my dad, Robbie Waller, our other assistant, Michael Leitner was that was our staff at the time. Talked with Rob and Mike, and just right time, right move, and so ended up going there. And it was funny because we're at that high school national tournament. I mentioned we had just had a really good recruiting class, and then I'm watching high school nationals, and I think Kyle Dake beat Mike Nevinger in the semis, and they were both going to Cornell, and then he wrestled Craig Eifert in the finals, or maybe he wrestled Nevy in the finals. Anyway, all three of them were right up there, and they were all going to Cornell, and they're all middleweight. So it's like, all right, this could be fun there too. So yeah, convinced my wife, girlfriend at the time, she did a year of grad school, so we did a year long distance. I lived in Damien's basement with Screwy Louis Lazari. I don't know if you're familiar with Louis.
Saw him yesterday at the Princeton Open.
Yeah. So me and Louis lived in Damien's basement. That was awesome. But no, it just ended up being a great time at Cornell. Obviously the Kyle thing was pretty special, being a part of that. And then there were so many other studs that we had coming through it, the Mac Lunas and Steve Bozak and Cam Simon. So that was really neat. Being a part of all that, and which was fun. Actually, the World Championships, I did watch the World Championships. Me and my dad and my brother were going to go if it wasn't the week before season, because Sammy Hazelwinkle, I coached his last 3 years of college, first 2 years of Greco, and then we had Nashawn, who I coached him his first 2 years at Cornell, and then Kyle, who I was with for all 4 years. So I really wanted to go so bad, and it killed me not to go, but I had to concentrate on our guys in the season coming up, so opted not to go. But I watched it. I woke up, I watched all those matches.
Well, that's pretty good to be part of that. Just to step back, do you have any goofy Screwy Louis stories from living in the basement with him?
I got a few. Well, this is not from living in the basement, but this is from a few years later. Louis was still living in Damien's basement, but would come. I bought a house down the street, not too far away, so he would come over to our house and hang out. He got close with me and my wife, and he's a great guy. So, but the one time, Damien was mad at him about something. Louis had made a mess in the house or something. So Damien kicked him out, which is a natural occurrence that happened all the time. So and Louis would be back the next day. So Damien had kicked him out. So Laura, my wife, goes walking outside, and she comes walking back in. She goes, Louis is sleeping in his car in our driveway.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, what? And I go out there. I'm like, Louis, why did you come in the house? I didn't want to bother you. It's the middle of the night. I gotta,
That's a pretty good impersonation.
You could have came in. So that was a good one. And then one of the other ones was around that same time, a few days after he stayed with us, and we had a big house at the time. Bought more of a house than we needed. We had 3 spare bedrooms with beds, actual beds, and we had 2 living rooms, both with nice couches. And I come out the one day, so I'm getting ready to go to bed, and he's on his computer. That was a fun thing. We'd be on watching wrestling. We'd have the 2 laptops, and we'd be watching like 8 different wrestling, wrestling on the TV, wrestling on the laptops, talking wrestling, and so that was fun hanging out with Louis because he's just a wrestling genius. I mean, he knows his knowledge is pretty up there. So. So I go to bed that night. I'm like, hey, make yourself at home. We got all this stuff, wherever you want to go. I come out the next morning. We have hardwood floors. He's sleeping on the hardwood, no blanket, no pillow, just on his back like this.
In repose.
I'm like, Louis, what are you doing? I'm like, we got all these beds and bedding and pillow. It's better for my back. All right. So, there's definitely a lot of good Louis stories.
That's funny. So the first time I met him, he was sleeping at my coach's house, Dan Hinkle in Pennsylvania, and almost the exact same thing on the dining room floor. He was sleeping like that, and I was up. It was the morning before a tournament, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I don't want to get too comfortable." That was it. That's all he said. I didn't want to be too comfortable. And I was like a 7th grader or something. It was I hadn't met that type of personality yet, but I can relate to it as I get older.
Yeah.
Anyway, good stuff. So you've been around wrestling. You've been wrestling and around wrestling 98% of your life, your entire life.
Yeah.
How do you keep your competitive fire burning?
That's good. That's a good question. I like that. Well, actually, going back on that too is pretty cool. I was putting something down about my wrestling experience the other day, and I had been to the NCAA since 1994, and I went first as a fan. We used to go watch the guys, and then as an athlete, and then as a coach now for 15 years. So it's pretty neat to see all those different perspectives, but. Honestly, for me, I've always just been competitive. I like to compete, like even little things. I like to play board games. I like to play cards. I like to, I've been playing a little bit more golf. I'm not very good. I played a lot of frisbee golf in college was our thing. We used to go out and play. But I like to compete at those things. So I think coaching kind of gives me that, when I got done. That was part of the reason I didn't get into business is I still had that fire and everything. And then I think the guys, honestly, because when you see, and as an athlete, I put so much in. I mean, I lived it. We had fun, we had a good time in Missouri, but we lived it, And so when you've done that as an athlete and you've given it your all and you come away from it, then when you see somebody that's doing that same thing, when you see these kids living it and you see that they're going all in and they're, then you want it for them, and so then I think that helps you get fired up maybe in days where, I'm coming in and like this upcoming weekend, we've got 2 duels with our varsity on Friday with Indiana and Sunday with Iowa State, and then we've got the Maryville tournament on Saturday with all the red shirts backups. It's going to be a long weekend. I'm going to be worn out, but when we go to that tournament and I see our guys and they go get ready to step on the line and they come over to shake your hand beforehand, that's where you get fired up, because you're like, you see this kid putting in all the work and now it's time to go see it pay off, So I think that helps too,
Absolutely. There's, anybody who's 100% committed, it's so hard not to connect with them if you've been that way in the past yourself. It's just, my wife had never met a wrestler before we met, and she's always like, how come you have an instant bond with any wrestler you ever meet anywhere around the world? And I'm like, because what suffering is and what, when it finds meaning, it's not suffering. And, it's just a bond that, coach, wrestler, anyway. Dig it.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because my wife was the same way. She not really an athlete at all, never really cared that much about athletics. She was, much more creative and a great writer and things like that. But when we got together, at first she really didn't understand it. It was really the first year when she went to the NCAA tournament that she got it. She turned to me. I remember she was like, "Okay, I get it now." That happened to be Dake's freshman year, so that's
a pretty special run.
But she used to tell me, like, especially being an assistant coach, you get some crappy jobs. You're up there in early mornings and working out with guys, and you're doing this, and you're getting late calls and running tournaments, and it's not the most glamorous job always.
Everybody's lying to you about their recruit. Anyway, go ahead. Oh, he's a great kid. Anyway.
But one of the things she used to say to me is she used to be like, isn't there somebody else that could do it? And I used to tell her, yeah, maybe there is, but I'm not going to make somebody else do it. And I think that's that wrestling mentality, because it's on you. You're not looking at teammates to do things. You got to go and do it. And so, it was funny when, I got the call to go to Cornell and then the call to come to SIUE. I mentioned she made a great sacrifice and came with me, and had some trouble finding jobs. She's a school psychologist, so she had to get into the school districts, and first year was having trouble and stuff. And one time she told me, you don't understand job applications because people just call and offer you jobs. And I said, well, that's true, and I've been really lucky and been in some good situations and things like that. But I said, part of the reason people call me is because I don't ask other people to do things, because I'm going to go do that work, whether it's the crappiest job or it's the best job. I'm going to go mop the mats, or I'm going to go do it. I'm not going to ask somebody else to do it. And people see that. And I think that's, we talked to our guys about giving yourselves opportunities. I didn't know whether I wanted to coach or whether I wanted to get it into business, but I knew if I worked really hard and I did the right things, that I'd leave myself opportunities, and so that's something that we talk with our guys a lot about, and something, I'm proud to say my wife works her butt off now and went back to grad school because the job she was in wasn't fulfilling, and she saw me doing a job that I loved, and now she works her butt off, and I'd say now she's kind of got a little bit of that wrestling attitude as well.
Totally. The only thing it's great. I mean, the intrinsic values that we carry forward from the sport, and my wife runs a sales desk, and she realized about 5-6 years ago, hiring wrestlers was just a slam dunk. She's got guys from so many schools. They're easily coachable. They're hard workers. They're eager to learn, and they don't go crying and calling their mom to talk to you if there's a problem, and it's just, I know Forbes has written stories about it, and a number of other, print organizations about what the benefits of having that kind of mentality in your workforce are.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about restoring the glory here at Edwardsville.
Yep. Well, I spoke a little bit about the glory early, with all the program history, and I don't think I mentioned Larry Kristoff, the old coach that he was a national champion at Carbondale, our other university within the system, and was Olympic coach, world team coach. Was an Olympian himself, just legendary wrestler coach. But so when I got here, I mentioned that the so many positives that brought me here, the area, the people, the school, the history of the program. So I had all those things, and I was kind of looking for, what's our theme going to be? What's our brand going to be? And, I'm looking at these guys and seeing a lot of glory. If you walk down to our Hall of Fame thing, like I said, the number of wrestlers in there and just awesome people. And so Sinking Glory, and then, kind of looking for a theme there, and came up with what's our goal here. Our goal is to bring this back to a glory program, to a program that's putting guys in the NCAA tournament every year, that are putting guys on the podium. We want to have our first D1 national champ. We've had D2 national champs, and we've had D1 All-Americans, but we want to have that first D1 national champ. And so we want glory. And we talk about it in a couple different areas, because obviously we want glory on the mats. We're a wrestling team. That's what we're here to do. But we are also, we're at a great university. We're students, and we want our guys out in the community. So we talk about taking pride in your wrestling taking pride in your academics and taking pride in being a part of the community you're in, whether that's, your family or your faith or, just being out in the community doing things for others. So we talk about glory, but it's not just glory on the mats. We want our guys to be well-rounded, so when they walk out of here, they have options. A lot of them are going to be done like their coach and go coach wrestling,
Yeah.
the rest of their lives. But, we've got guys that are doing engineering things and guys that are, in the business world. Jake Residori, our first All-American, just got a great job opportunity from one of our other alumni, Sean Hickey, who, he just said, hey, I know he's got his MBA and he's wants to get into business, and I'm going to take a risk on this guy because he's a wrestler and he was somebody who wrestled at a high level. And I talked with Sean last week about it, and he said he's crushing it. He said he's doing such a great job, and he's in there all excited, and but no, that's kind of a little bit behind the restore the glory, and our alumni actually, Al Sears, I think might have been the one that said it at our NCAA party a few years ago. He said we've got to change it from it. We started out with restore the glory, and he said, obviously having one All-American is not the goal. We're not where we want to be yet. But we're on our way. That was a big step for us, first All-American in 30 years, first D1 All-American in 30 years. So Al Sears changed it from restore the glory to restoring the glory because we're on our way now.
Yeah,
so.
I like it. Well, accurate language.
Yeah.
You've been at this for a while, and you're a pretty thoughtful person. I'm just wondering what advice you would give yourself, either as your first year as head coach or when you started coaching. What kind of advice you'd give yourself?
Ooh, man, that's a good question. Well, I got some really good advice early from Barry Weldon, was the other assistant coach when I went to Oklahoma with my dad. Barry was there, and Barry taught me a lot, actually. He really taught me a lot about coaching. And, one of the things he told me is, what do you do when you go home at night? And I was like, well, I don't know. Do this or do that, watch some TV. It's like, we work at night. Like, what do you mean? It's like, we call recruits. We get caught up from the day. If we haven't done that, we get ready for tomorrow. If you haven't done that, we work at night. And I was like, okay. And, and I was like, how much or that, and he said, you figure it out.
Interesting.
Like that, right along those lines. But, I think, man, that's a good question. Honestly, when I first became a head coach was probably the biggest things, was the biggest learning experience for me. I think, man, you stumped me on that one. I've been doing good so far, but
we can come back to it.
I would say maybe more. So the hard work I always had, I would say more organization. That probably would be my advice to a younger me, especially the head coach. Putting systems in place so that you are organized, that type of thing. Recruiting. Recruiting, honestly, has been something that I've had to work really hard at. I'm still not a great recruiter. And when I went to Oklahoma, my dad was a great recruiter, and the other assistants did a lot of it. Same thing at Cornell. Rob and Damian Hahn were just great recruiters. So I would say recruiting was a big part. Getting out there and having. It's funny because I could sit here and talk with you, and we're talking wrestling, and we're having a great conversation. I could sit down with one of my guys and sit and talk, but when I would call those recruits, I get so nervous about it. And it's like, I just got to talk and have a regular conversation, be normal,
Yeah.
So recruiting is one I've really had to work hard at and learn a lot in the recruiting aspect. Interesting.
The fear of certain things can really put that doubt in our brain just in some areas.
It's funny. And I used to write down all these lists of things to talk about, and, because I want to be prepared. And so I write about all this, and I'll still write, notes for the conversation. But now I just get in and I just talk to kids like I'm going to talk to them when they get here, and they're my athletes. and let's do the same thing.
That's it. That's it, right? That way it's the right fit.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about this mental approach, can you tell me a little bit how you would deal with a loss as an athlete, and has it changed as a coach?
Yes, actually. And mentality as an athlete, I would have definitely changed that. I worked hard on that, but that was something, and this is all hindsight, but looking back, I think growing up, idolizing these college wrestlers and going to the NCAA tournament and seeing this great wrestling, I think that actually hurt me a little bit, because I think when I got there, looking back on it, I don't think I knew that I deserved to be there, or that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a little bit. I think, when I went to the NCAA tournament, I remember that first year, like, wide-eyed and like, oh, I got to beat this guy. I got to beat this guy. There's so many great guys in this bracket. And, in hindsight, I'd go back and just compete a little bit more and not worry about that stuff as much. My senior year, when I stopped looking at brackets, I just tell my coaches, you tell me who I'm wrestling. If we need a little bit of a game plan, let's do that. But other than that, I don't care. I'm just going to go wrestle. And that helped me a lot. So I think that mentally was something that I would do differently as an athlete. And from the coaching aspect, that's something we've really worked hard this year. And I think that's part of, I was mentioning earlier, we have a good vibe going on right now. I think part of that's we've worked hard at it. We've tried to have the mentality things. We've done a few things where we had a get together with our team and a lot of those alumni who I mentioned earlier. We had everybody go through and talk about their experience, and we had the alumni talk and just tell some of the old stories. They told some funny stories, and they also told some serious wrestling stories, so that these guys could get a feel from them. We had the Marines come and do a few leadership workouts where they were doing some physical training, and then also some mental things while they were fatigued, trying to work on that type of thing. So we've really tried to hit mentality a lot this year. Well, honestly, that, you mentioned something I would change early as a coach. I didn't work on mentality as much as we worked on technique and things like that. And especially when I got here, and, we had some guys, Jake Residori was already here that could wrestle at this level. And we had some guys that probably weren't quite at this level, but were here. And, so we had a lot of ups and downs and peaks and valleys. And as we've worked on the mentality more, then we've become a little bit more consistent. So that's something as a young coach I would definitely go work harder at, is the mental aspect of it, and making sure your guys are mentally prepared the right way. And that's something else too that, I think I did a good job of relating to guys technically and one-on-one, but I feel like also early as a coach before the match, I'm the same way either way, where some guys might want to be a little more pumped up. Some guys need to take it back a little bit. So those are some things I've learned as a coach a little bit too, to try to get to the bottom of it, or figure out, if a guy's struggling mentally because he's getting nervous every time, like, we can talk about it, but how do we actually get to the bottom of that? How do we fix that to where your nerves, you're going to be nervous. If you're not nervous, my dad always says, if you're not nervous, you're dead. You're going to be nervous. You're supposed to be nervous.
You're supposed to, right?
It shouldn't be, disability, where you can't do anything, or where you're losing because of that. So I think that's something I'd say as a younger coach, I would work a little bit harder at figuring kids out and figuring out what makes them tick, and the why of everything.
Got it. We've talked about it. You've been involved with wrestling your entire life. Mm-hmm. Are there things that you reflect back on, a thing that you consider your biggest success or accomplishment, and maybe your greatest disappointment?
Greatest accomplishment, honestly, the things I look back on now, being an All-American was special. I always wanted to be on that podium, and I can remember standing up there and taking that quarter turn, and, that there's always going to be something special about that. But the biggest things I remember are our team things. You know, I mentioned when we beat Oklahoma State, I actually lost in that match. I lost to Zach Esposito, and it was crushed. I was team captain. I'm a senior. I'm supposed to be a leader, and I lose this. I think he was sophomore that year.
From Jersey. Come on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, right? So actually, for a long time, I really disliked Zach until I got to know him, and now we're friends. He's a good dude. But yeah, so being on the podium, and then the team things, that being in the finals of the national duels was really special. And then disappointments. My biggest disappointment, I think, was my junior year at the NCAA tournament. I came out. I got a high ankle sprain. Our last duel, real bad high ankle sprain. Was in a boot for a few days, and at the Big 12s, our plan was to see how it goes. Try to get in to a spot where I can qualify, and so I had it all taped up, get shot up for the Big 12s, and wrestled, and actually wrestled all right. They told me not to. Sorry.
That's right.
The game plan was not be real offensive because I was having trouble driving off my foot. So the plan was to, lay back, try to be more defensive, get on top, look for turns, things like that. And so I got through and made it to the NCAA tournament. And I got there, and I just, honestly, I froze. My first match, I think I was beating the kid. I think I took him down in the first, and he got on top, and I just got scared. I got scared to get hurt of my ankle, and I wrestled terrible. I went 0-2, and just terrible NCAA tournament. And that really taught me a lot about that next year, though. That really helped me. I don't think I would have been on the podium that next year if it weren't for that year, because last duel of my senior year, I sprained my MCL and tore a little meniscus, and then at the Big 12s had a bad Big 12 tournament. But all five of us, there was five of us. The lowest ranked guy was 7th, so it was a pretty tough weight class. Yeah. But I went 0-2, and I sprained my other knee, so I got 2 knee sprains, and I'm going in the NCAA tournament coming off an 0-2 Big 12s, and I remember thinking, I don't want that feeling from last year. I knew that I just didn't wrestle. Yeah. And that's the reason I lost. I think I could have beat both the kids I lost to. I think I was better than them. And I said, I'm not going to let that feeling happen again. If I lose, I lose, but I'm not going to go lay out there and lose. If I lose, I'm gonna lose fighting. I'm going down swinging. I've been doing this for too long. This is my last shot at this. I'm going down swinging. And so I think that was a big part of coming out, and I just wrestled that from senior year. I think almost every guy I wrestled, except for Trill, that got hit with stalling or took a timeout, like I just wrestled, and it was my best tournament.
Right. So just with those in mind, some coaches, they tell their coaching philosophy is, you learn more from success than you do from failure. Some say you learn from failure. I think you learn different things. Do you have any philosophy about learning from success and failure?
Yeah. Honestly, this is something, going back to the mentality piece that we were talking about a minute ago, is we're trying to learn every time we go out there. We're trying to get better, and that's one thing that I think is such a big key, is just don't worry about wins. Don't worry about losses. I mean, we want to win, but at the same time, if we're going out every day in practice and getting better, then the wins are going to come. If we're going out and every time we compete, we're competing at a higher level, just a little bit higher level. Maybe it's figuring it out mentally, the mentality you want to have. Maybe it's making your weight cut better. Maybe it's, your warm up a little bit better. Maybe it's your shots, your offense can get a little bit better. I can always get a little bit better on top, So we just really work on going out and improving every day. And if we're doing that, then the wins and losses will take care of themselves. I mean, you're going to lose. I mean, Kyle Dake's one of the best wrestlers I've been around. Kid lost matches, but he used every match he lost to get better. And he used every match he won to get better as well, And so that's something we talk a lot about, is let's not worry about who our opponent is and who we have that next match of the tournament. Let's go out and wrestle on this match and compete this day. Because you don't know when you're going to get hurt and not have that opportunity to do it again. So you got to take advantage of those opportunities you do have and just go out and compete.
You're saying so many things that I believe deeply. It's awesome talking. This is great. Tell me a little bit about the support the school is throwing behind wrestling. Are you fully funded? What are the facilities?
They're doing a great job. We're not fully funded. We're very close. So we're like 8.5 out of the 9.9 as far as scholarships. We've got a full coaching staff, although one position's a grad assistant. Our budget has gone up every year since I've been here. We start out with one assistant coach. Now we have the full 4 coaches, and actually we have some alumni around that come to some of our freestyle off-season freestyle and RTC practices, that kind of thing. So they've upped us there. They've upped us scholarship wise. Not every year, but we've gone up scholarship wise. And one of the things with scholarship at the university here, you can get a lot of academic aid. So a lot of our guys, I'd say about 30% of our guys are on some academic money, whether they're on athletic or not. So if we were the full scholarships, they could either choose their academic money or their scholarship. So with the way that we do it, we're probably, with our equivalencies with academic scholarship, we're actually probably pretty close to that 9.9.
Okay.
So that's something I haven't pushed quite as much with the scholarship because we get a lot of money there. Just athletic department, but we're trying to, like most universities, grow enrollment and build. And so my first year, it was in-state, out-of-state. My second year, any bordering state was in state. It was the reciprocity, which was awesome. Like I said, we got some good states that we're connected to. And then last year, they said no in-state tuition, no out-of-state tuition. It's tuition. Okay. And so that's a huge one for us. So everybody's in-state tuition. That's about a $10,000, $11,000 difference just right there. So that was a good one by the university. But going back to the athletic department, our athletic director is great, Dr. Hewitt. We've got a great relationship. I mentioned when we moved to New York, my wife had a hard time finding a job. We moved here. I moved my wife in on Tuesday. She was hired at Collinsville School on Friday. And that was Dr. Hewitt's wife, Kay, was a principal there. And it was an internship the first year, so it was she was working full-time and getting paid half-time, but it got her foot in the door, and they hired her full-time that next year. And so Dr. Hewitt and Kay have been great. My Jason Coomer, our associate AD, I always say that word, deputy AD.
Okay.
He is actually the one who hired me, who first called me about the opportunity here. And Jason's on the NCAA rules committee, for wrestling. And so he's obviously really involved with the sport. And they've been great. Oh, this is a really cool one. You don't see this at a lot of universities. So we got a new chancellor 2 years ago. And he actually graduated. He graduated from here in the 70s. Just awesome guy. And Randy Pembroke is his name. And so he sent me a personal email and said, I've always liked wrestling, and this is his first year, 2 years ago. And he said, I've always liked the sport. I was around in high school, and I realized you just had your last duel, and I didn't come out to a wrestling match. I'm so sorry. Send me an invite next year, and I'll be there. And I'm like, first of all, you're apologizing to me for not coming to a duel, the chancellor of the university. I'm like, that's crazy. But I emailed him back and I said, well, I really appreciate that. We'll definitely get you here for a home duel next year. But I said, we still have NCAAs in St. Louis. And I said, this is before the SoCon, so we didn't have any guaranteed spots. But I said, I'm not positive, but we'll have guys there, Yeah. And so we ended up qualifying 3 guys, and so he came over. One of our alumni, Mike O'Day, he's just awesome. He got great seats. He's right on the 50-yard line. I said, Mike, I need to borrow your tickets for this one section. The chancellor's coming. I'll get you these other tickets. Like, I need a favor. And he was like, "Oh yeah." So the chancellor came, and I don't think he realized. Most people, I mentioned my wife earlier. You go to the NCAA tournament. If you go to college dual outside of a few of the schools, you get a few hundred people in the stands. You go to high school duels. It's not usually crazy. You show up at the NCAA tournament, 18,000 people are screaming, chanting the different schools, and people are like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
So our chancellor came. To the NCAA tournament, and he loved it. We had a couple guys win Residore All-American that year, and Freddie Rodriguez won some matches for us. Jake Tyndall was there for us, so he saw some wins and just was like, man, that was awesome. And last year we had our 3 national qualifiers, and him and his wife are awesome. His wife Mary Jo does a ton for the community and things like that. So they said, we want to have your 3 national qualifiers over to our house for dinner. And they wanted to do, and I was like, man, they said, we want to start inviting the teams that make the NCAA tournament over for dinner. They said we do it for some other programs. They had the music program over or something like that. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was at the NCAA tournament, I think, when I got the email. I'm like, that's amazing. And then unfortunately, we had a kid pass last year. We had a freshman, Bryce Sheffer from Union County, Kentucky, was home at spring break while, he was redshirting. So our guys, we just had the guys that were wrestling at NCAAs here and their workout partners. So he was hurt. So he was back home and he was in a quad accident and passed away. And that was right before the NCAA tournament. So that was a rough time. And it was pretty neat because the chancellor, instead of just inviting those 3 athletes, had the whole team over. And and cooked dinner, and him and his wife, and I brought my wife, and our ADs came, and it was just awesome, and you don't see that at a lot of universities.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that it's such a great environment for the team that you're building, and it's a model for other schools that that kind of awareness.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And they want to see us succeed, so that makes it fun.
Totally. A lot of my fans are not super aware of Illinois as a high school wrestling state, but I don't know if it's at Fargo or Schoolboy. They always end up winning freestyle and Greco team titles constantly. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to recruit in Illinois?
Yeah. Well, and so actually, Team Illinois, Don Reynolds and their crew, they do an amazing job, and they let me coach the last 4 years. So I've coached the Team Illinois up in Fargo, and that's been a great experience. But yeah, they've got a great system. They've got a ton of great coaches. You go to the Illinois training camp, and you got Steve Marinetti running it, and John Kading and Mike Poeta, and all these guys have done so many great things, and so many different great high school coaches that are involved with it. It's awesome, and so you have a lot of really good clubs in the area. Is a big part of it in the state that do well with that, but it's been a good and a bad thing. It's tough because, I've been turned down a lot by the kids in Illinois, especially our first few years. And, so that's tough. A lot of teams are looking, a lot of big teams are looking at the state of Illinois. I mean, even within the state, you've got, now with us, you've got us, Illinois, NIU, and Northwestern, all D1 programs, plus a number of McKendree's turning into a really good D2 program, and you got a number of D3s up in Chicago area. So a lot of good programs just in the state. And then, I know Oklahoma's always up here trying to get a couple of those guys. Old Dominion's been all over the Chicago area guys. They've signed a few guys the last few years. So, it is difficult, but at the same time, I was telling somebody the other day, I went up to the Dvorak tournament, which is a good Christmas tournament my first year, and I'm watching these guys wrestling for 5th and 6th, and I'm like, man, these kids can wrestle. I'm like, he's in for 5th,
Right.
So, we're building our name within the state. We're getting better with the recruiting in here, but it is nice to have so many, if a kid's placing multiple times in the state of Illinois, he's going to come to compete at this level,
What kind of recognition or awareness does the student body have of wrestling, and what's your attendance like?
Attendance, honestly, when I first got here was rough.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the biggest biggest things. It's gotten better every year. So we've been building. Our biggest was Mizzou 2 years ago. We had about 1,100 here, so that was awesome. We had to open up the top part of our bleachers, so that was really fun for the first time. But we've been building every year. We get a lot of the other athletes. So one of the cool things about being a smaller athletic department is everybody supports each other,
Yep.
and it's a family atmosphere. So a lot of the other athletes come. As far as students, we don't get a huge student gathering. Part of that is we don't have football here, so we're not a big. A lot of schools, they get the excitement out because of the football program, and people, get involved more with the athletic department. So that's a little part of it. I think part of it is, all the programs did really well when they were D2, and then now we move to a D1 program, and some of us not having as much, us included, are not having as much success. Now all our teams are getting better, so that's getting better and better across the board. But student involvement or student match at our matches is not as much. We try to get a lot of the high school, the local high school and youth programs to come, and we're getting a good following. There's a number of the youth programs where we'll do like the free clinic before our matches.
That's awesome.
So now they're
get them hooked
about that. Yeah,
totally. Can you describe your approach as the head coach? Are you a CEO? Are you more hands-on? What elements are you running? What do you let Eric do? What do you let the other guys do?
So that's something that I probably should have mentioned when you were asking me about learning. For me, I want to do it. Like I mentioned earlier, my wife, I want to be the one to do it. I feel like I'd work best if I'm doing it. So that's been something I've had to let go of control, of things. But no, it's varied with each staff, because you try to find guys' strengths and find their weaknesses, and work on those. But also, if you're a great recruiter, then I'm gonna give you more of the recruiting aspect. So like Eric handles one of the things. I have no style, and I'm old, and so I never had style. So he picks out the gear, and he always comes and asks me. He's like, what do you think about this, or what do you think? I'm like, man, I don't care. I'm like, if you like it, if the guys like it, do it. I don't care about gear. But he does our gear. He does our travel. That was something I did travel for 9 years, so I was really happy to hand that off. There's a lot of logistical work in traveling a team, but at the same time, it was hard for me to do. I was, questioning all it. Well, why are we staying here?
Right.
But Eric does that. Barlow is a room guy. He loves being in the wrestling room. His dad was Little League coach, so he's been around the sport, similar to myself for a long time. So Barlow loves being in the room. So we've kind of given him a lot more than individual drills or things like that. He's been doing our hurt guys during practice, making sure they have a good practice plan. He wants to coach, so he's laying out different plans for them and things like that. So. With us, we all kind of have a role, but at the same time, and I think most programs are like this, we all have a role, but at the same time, everybody's jumping in when things, like I said, this weekend, Eric's doing travel, but I mentioned we've got a home duel, then we've got an away tournament, it's only an hour away, but then we have an away duel on Sunday, so we've got a long weekend, so it was like yesterday when we got in the office, I was like, hey, we all got to pitch in and help him get this weekend figured out, So.
Okay. What do you guys do outside the room? Maybe fun. I mean, some teams play dodgeball, some go camping, some spike ball. What do you guys?
A little bit of all the above. So we do a few things. We used to do a camp out at the beginning of the year at Dave Strickfadden. He's our one of our trainers and was here back in the day, actually, and it's awesome. So we camp out at his house, and then our guy said, we want to spend the day playing games over there, which we do a bunch of yard games and barbecues and everything. It's awesome. But they said, well, let's spend the day and not spend the night and just hang out more during the day where we can play a bunch, and then we want to go sleep in our own bed. So we let them do that. So we moved that to just a team event. But we've got spike ball in the room. Spike ball's love spike ball for a wrestling room game. That's a great.
Where do you stack up in spike ball?
I'm pretty good, although I did lose a step. It'd been a while since I had played, and I've taken a few L's in the room. It's really bothering me lately. I got to get my game back. When I was playing a lot, I'm pretty good.
Who's the best guy on the team?
What's that?
Who's the best guy on the team?
On our team, Jake McKiernan, one of our heavyweights, is really good. Jacob Blaha, one of our he's a 33-pounder. He's a younger guy, but Jacob's a redshirt freshman. But Jacob's pretty good in all games. Okay. He's up there. So we got a few that are pretty good. Nate Higgins is not bad. So we got a couple guys that are pretty good, and then. We actually started the dodgeball 2 years ago. We were struggling. I talked about the mentality and the up and down, and we were struggling. It was January. We had a tough December. I mean, we had a ridiculously tough December, ending with the Midlands, and our guys were down. You could just, it was not fun. Even as a coach, you could feel it. It just wasn't a fun time to be a part of the program. I said, we got to do something. We're not having any fun. And I had gotten away. I had let the season kind of sweep me up, as our guys had, and we had gotten away from. We hadn't been working on mentality. We hadn't been taking a step back and talking and looking at that perspective like we talked about earlier. So I told Rossi Bruno, was our assistant coach at the time, I said, this is about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, we need dodgeballs. We practice at 3:30, so it's right before practice. And I was like, we need dodgeballs. And he's like, okay, yeah, I'll see online and get them for tomorrow. And I said, no, we need dodgeballs at practice right now. We need to start out this practice in a good mood. These guys are down in the dumps. We got to change this. And so he goes to Walmart, and he called me and Eric, and he was flustered because I made him do it last minute anyway. And then he gets there and he's like, I can't find anything. I was like, I don't care what you have to get. Find something that we can throw at each other. Right. Soccer balls, I don't care what it is. Get it done. And he came in, he was all grumpy, and our guys played dodgeball and loved it. And we don't do it every day, but we'll probably 2-3 times a week we'll play dodgeball at the beginning of practice. But we do other things as well. We usually during Christmas or Thanksgiving break we'll do take them out to, there's a bowling alley that's got games and a laser tag, so we'll do that, or we'll I'll have them over to the house and we'll play games at the house and cook dinner. We had a bunch of the guys over to watch the World Championships on Saturday because they didn't all rent it, so I said, hey, I rented it, and come over and watch the championships. So just some things like that. We try to do a lot of different things across the board to keep it fun, to keep it, it is a grind. So you got to do some things outside for sure.
And dodgeball is a great warm up. It gets kids excited to be in the room. They're sweating usually.
It's such a big difference. I was talking about this recently. When you walk in a wrestling room and everybody's lined up on the edge of the mats and everybody's sitting down and nobody's really talking because they know they're about to go through a 2-hour grind. The next 2 hours. And even if you just have 4 guys playing spike ball, those 4 guys are talking, they're laughing, they're having a good time. That's contagious. So when everybody else walks in, you see everybody sitting on the side, maybe they start talking, or they're laughing at that play at spike ball, or they're arguing. That hit rim, and these guys, it was like, did that hit rim, and these guys, I saw it, But there's such a difference in mentality when you walk in and people are smiling and having a good time compared to where you walk in and people are suck, And for us as coaches, it's the same thing. I mean, I don't want to get up every Monday morning at 6 a.m. and be in the weight room, but as I'm walking in, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot worse things I could be doing right now. I got a lot of good things happening in my life, and I'm gonna come in here with a good attitude, And so I think that's so big.
That's good stuff. I've kept you longer than I thought it would be. We've had a pretty good conversation. Do you have any last words for SIUE wrestling fans, Jeremy Spates fans?
No, not really. I think we covered a lot there. I appreciate you doing this. I know, it's not easy when you're putting in a lot of time from your end and trying to grow the sport. So I think that's huge. I think that's one thing that we got to get away from as coaches is we want to build our own program, but we got to make sure we're building wrestling and building great people too, and so that's something that I think it's great that you're doing that.
And thanks for sharing some video with me this year. We're going to try and get you more exposure.
It's awesome.
East Coast, although I got people from around the world who tune in, and I'll check back in with you maybe during the season.
Yeah, well, so we got those first couple matches this weekend, so we'll send you some stuff. Remind me next week if you haven't gotten anything early in the week. I'll make sure and get that out to you. But yeah, I'm excited about it. So yeah, let's stay in touch.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks for taking the time, Coach.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mike.